Good afternoon, everyone. John Pratt here. It is an honor to present to you my 25th Chautauqua. It's unbelievable to think that I've done 25 of these events. And of course, we are still dealing with the pandemic. And so this is my first virtual Chautauqua. It is a taped virtual Chautauqua. Everything that you see on the website was personalized for the Greensburg Chautauqua. There's no Googling for generic stuff. And the theme is the bucket list. And I think there's something for everyone here. So, my lovely wife, Jill, of more than 25 years, has thought that she would ask me some questions in recognition of this event. I have not seen them. I am sure they are well thought out, and I shall provide the answers. It's pretty rare I get a chance to actually talk about Chautauqua, and so I'm kind of looking forward to it. Mrs. Pratt, I am ready when you are.
Thank you. So, my first question for you is where did you get the idea to host a Chautauqua?
I'm a history major, and when I was in college, we had to do one major history paper, and I did mine on Greensburg, Decatur County. It had the title, A Tree Grows in Greensburg. Now, in my research, I found several things I had no idea about, and one of which was the traveling Chautauqua. And in the teens and 20s, these traveling Chautauquas would come to small communities all throughout the Midwest. There was a great one in Greensburg. William Jennings Bryan and Helen Keller were here. St. Paul had one. Bernie had one. John Philip Sousa was at Bernie. So I was fascinated by it. And talent agencies would line up the headliner, and then the local talent would fill in the rest. It was a lot of lecture and a lot of music. So when I started teaching 14 years ago, I quickly found out there was something missing. And it was a little old-fashioned inspiration. And I thought, well, why don't we give it a shot and try and do a Chautauqua? And this was, of course, my first of 5 years at North Decatur, with the idea of greatness does exist even in small towns, and that greatness exists within each one of us. So wouldn't it be cool if we could, on the one hand, bring great talent here that usually never comes here? It just comes to the bigger cities. And wouldn't it be great then if we could showcase some of our great talent within our students? And so each time we have these wonderful student Chautauqua projects as well.
So, this is a question that I get asked, and so I know people would want to ask you this question. How do you find all your guests?
It's just because I know so many people, okay? It's just because if you Google, find me really cool people who are really willing to come to Greensburg, Indiana for travel costs. No, it doesn't exist. It takes hundreds of hours of research, and what you do is you're finding people who are history makers or culturally significant, and they have a message or they have a performance to share that can enlighten and inspire us. But what happens is I'm doing it on a shoestring budget. The difference between my event and Indiana University is hundreds of thousands of dollars, okay? And so I accept that challenge. And so when I'm out there cultivating potential relationships, I liken it to fishing. You're looking for a nibble. And then sometimes it takes 8, 9, 10 years for that nibble to actually be a fish that will be caught. And they all don't happen, but enough of them do that makes it extremely rewarding. I can tell you on any given day, today being a good example, that we have been able to find relationships and new contacts through this virtual event that I know one day will be here in person. Good question, Mrs. Pratt.
Thank you very much. All right, so for every person that responds and says, yes, I would like to come and be a part of your Chautauqua, how many no's do you think you get?
At least 200, and possibly more. And so I am by nature a thin-skinned person, but in this one particular area, you have to develop thick skin and to realize that the vast majority of these people who say no, they all have good reasons. Maybe they're inundated with requests. Maybe it's bad timing. I can usually tell if it's a possibility down the road.
What do you consider your biggest achievement in your past 25 Chautauquas? One thing you started off with a rather small, and it has certainly grown.
The first event had a budget of 0, and it was everyone who could drive in. And I'll never forget, of course, our evening entertainment starred the great Allison Bates and her husband, and it was wonderful opera music. And that was all lined up because of the great Denise Bates. I would be remiss if I didn't say at that point in time, Chautauqua wouldn't have developed the way it has if it wasn't for some really supportive people at North Decatur, like Denise Bates, like Pam Thackeray, like my principal Gary Cook, like my superintendent Dr. Dan Roach, and some really, really, really supportive parents and community members who have been with me from the start. In that second one, I decided to be bold, and we raised enough money, about $300, so we could fly someone in. And that first guest from out of town was Rosemary Von Trapp, of one of the original Von Trapp family singers, who lived at the family's hotel that they have run ever since they came to America in Vermont. And that evening, she dazzled us by playing her guitar, singing songs from The Sound of Music. And I knew we had something there. And we were able to develop. So in terms of what I feel my greatest accomplishment is just the fact that we've had 25 of these, that we have brought in just from Chautauqua, which doesn't include any of the other programs and the interviews, over 200 guests. And you have to figure that, I mean, it's thousands upon thousands of students and members of our community who have been, I would like to think, positively touched in some way. I would say that would be my answer.
Okay. So how do students react to your guests? Have there been any particular guests that your students have really connected with or been very impressed by? And I know all the guests are wonderful, but I just wonder, you're there with the students every day. How do they respond?
High school students, generally, when it comes to Chautauqua, I put them in one of 3 classifications. The rule of thirds. A third of them will get it right away, and certain guests really connect to them. I think some of the ones that connect to them, the number one topic that students are most interested in is the Holocaust. I have hosted in person 12 Holocaust survivors. Definitely, that is an example of guests that have connected. The other group that really connects well with students are those that come from the entertainment industry. We've had some great, from Tony nominated Liz Calloway to Ed Asner and Mike Farrell and Alison Arngrim and Mary McDonough and so many others, that the entertainers are much more developed at being able to connect. The second third, of course, would be those that will get it eventually, and some don't get it, and that's okay. And it might be something that they'll positively respond to later down the road. So,
Okay. So I have another question for you. Um, as someone that knows how much work you put into this program, how many hours you put into it, the blood, the sweat, and the tears, what motivates you to keep on going after these past 25 Chautauquas?
I think everyone is completely different. There's similarities, but they're different. Um, and it's kind of like, I come from a sports background, so you're going for a win. Um, to achieve that next Chautauqua goal, to get the yes that I'm looking for, knowing if I get the yes, I can form a connection for a student or someone in the community. And I look at this one, and this is a good example. When you look at some of the people that we have been able to connect with, people like Drake Bell, people like Tommy John, the baseball player. And there's a lot of other little ones that I find great value in this one. When a student, you'll find one part in the bucket list. I asked all students to name somebody, who would you like to meet in everyone in the world? And I literally had to go through about 100 to get so far 2 positive responses. I'm still hoping to add 1 or 2 more. So these are 2 students who said, of anyone in the world who I could meet, that I would like to meet this person. And so I would track these 100 people down, ask 100 people. 2 of them said yes. And so I was able to be a part of the taped conversation between the student and that person. And those are the kind of moments that continue to motivate me.
So I know everyone has certain guests or speakers or performers that have been their favorites or have really touched them. Do you have any special memories of any guests?
Um, it certainly starts when at North Decatur, when we brought in Rosemary Von Trapp. I think of some of the great themes that we've had. I think off the top of my head, I look at one, World War II Heroes and Survivors. I looked at Based on a True Story, African American Achievements, and some of the great evening entertainers that we have. And we have, I believe, 7 different countries have flown people in. But when I look at the fact that we were actually able to host a Nobel Peace Laureate from Liberia to Greensburg, Indiana, I think that's pretty special.
Well, that's all my questions I have, but I would just like to say how wonderful, what a gift this program is to the students and to our entire community. And I'm just so proud of you for doing this and bringing these wonderful history makers and performers into us. And you can watch people on television or, like you said, on YouTube videos. But when you have somebody in person that you're making eye contact with, that you can ask questions of in person. It really just is an amazing experience. And I just want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Mrs. Pratt. And that was a totally unbiased comment that she just made there. I will add, I do, those who know me, I get the biggest kick out of people who we've hosted. When I see them on TV, I will always make the comment, boy, wouldn't it be neat to meet them one day? Ah, that's just not possible. So, what I would love for you to do is to enjoy this taped virtual Chautauqua. A lot of time went into it. It's got three categories: the bucket list, and it has literally this morning I added a new one. The castle where they filmed the Harry Potter movies in England was just added. Drake Bell is there, which is pretty cool. I'm a fan. So you got that whole list. Then you got the next subcategory of the bucket list tips for success. And this is a completely different wide variety. The third one is Poets Corner. And so we were able to get some of the world's most contemporary, well-known poets who are reading their poetry. Every single one has been personalized to us. So sit back, relax, and enjoy it. I have 100% plans and hopes of bringing next May our good old-fashioned in-person Chautauqua, and keep an eye on that Lee Greenwood concert, which is coming down the road. Tons of people to thank for making this and every one of our Chautauquas possible. Wonderful sponsors, supportive administration, the lovely Mrs. Pratt, my amazing daughters Claire and Caroline, and my extended family. I certainly couldn't do it without Jason Robbins, Scott Moore, Tammy Williams, Stephanie Overmeyer, so many of those great volunteers and who are out there getting the people to the airport back and forth. And of course, those incredibly supportive relationships that I have in the building within the teachers that do so much for me, particularly my posse down there, Heather Kummer, Brianna Krauschauer, and Katina Tokalvi. Enjoy. Thank you. Have a great evening.